Welcome to Law and Life, Episode 2 with Judge Bill Brandt.
Hello, Kayla. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Just fine and dandy.
Awesome. So just to give a brief recap of Episode 1, we discussed rental agreements, what it looks like when you have a crazy roommate, how your contract actually could protect you, and what steps to take if you end up getting evicted. Today we're going to be talking about property, pets, and then we're going to do a little Q&A from Episode 1 as promised. But let's go. Can you tell me a little bit about property today, Judge?
Well, we briefly talked about property last time when we talked about property is you. Property is your work. It turns into property. But I want to talk about protecting property and how you can protect your property. And I want to start with an old aphorism. An aphorism is a fancy word that means wise saying. Mm-hmm. And I collect aphorisms because it's cheaper than collecting watches and gold coins and those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. But the old aphorism is good fences make good neighbors. And what that implies is that if you've got a nice fence up between your property and the other fellow's property, you're likely to know what's yours and what's his, and he's likely to know what's his and what's yours. And then if somebody cuts a fence or gets across your fence, you know what kind of person they are, and you can take steps to deal with that. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I want to tell people about property is figure out what's your property and figure out what the other person's property is and respect their property and take care of your property. How do we take care of property? Well, one of the ways that we take care of property is we have insurance. So if you're driving a car, you should have insurance on it. And certainly you're required by the laws of the state of Texas to have, at a minimum, a certain amount of liability insurance on it. And if you ever have a wreck and you don't have liability insurance and you don't square up, you're probably going to lose your driver's license. Yeah. That's one of the things that my court does is we have liability, driver's license liability issues that the state brings. They didn't pay up. They were found to have, likely to have created the accident, and they can get out of it by paying up or having a law court decide that they weren't liable, or by entering into some kind of a payment agreement with the person whose car they damaged. So liability insurance matters. But let's talk about insurance on the property that you own that's maybe in an apartment. You can have renter's insurance. And you probably should, because there are certain circumstances in a leasehold where the landlord has insurance on the building, but your property's at risk. So you might want to have some insurance. Or you might make a judgment that right now at your time of life, the property that you're worth is not worth the insurance. And that's a business judgment. Mm-hmm. That's a judgment about about your affairs, which you should be learning to make. But I don't want to give you a hard and fast rule that you must have renter's insurance. Mm-hmm. But you must know that renter's insurance exists, and you must have a thought that says, I always have my computer with me, so I don't need renter's insurance on that.
I was actually just thinking that.
and that's the most valuable thing that I own outside my car, and I've got insurance on that. If this place burns down and all my clothes are burned up and that old couch is burned up, it's not a big enough loss to work, okay.
Exactly, yeah.
I'll just figure it out. But that thought about protecting your stuff, because it is your stuff, and it's not only your stuff, it's your responsibility. So here's another side of this lesson about good fences. You have to know that nobody else is responsible for taking care of your stuff. And I've had lawsuits, and sometimes they're really funny because someone will claim that she left something over at someone's house and they didn't return it to you.
You should tell the boot story.
Okay, well here's and this is a terrible story because it's about the loss of a friendship.
Yeah.
But these two young women are friends, and they go out clubbing, and they end up at one of the girls' houses, and I think there are some young men involved, but I that was my understanding, but that's not my problem. But the one young woman was time to leave, and she left, but she didn't have her nice $200 boots with her. I don't know how nice $200 boots are, but they sound medium nice. But it's only $200. But she left them, and then she came back to her friend's house a couple of days later and says, "Where are my boots?" And the friend says, "I have no idea where your boots are. They're not." She didn't say it in this way, but of course the legal answer is, your boots are not my responsibility. I didn't take them into my care. You left them here. So I'm sure sorry, but I don't know where your boots are. Well, unfortunately, the woman who left the boots sued, and she paid, $100 and whatever it was, $129 of court filing fees and service fees to get her $200 boots back. And then when it came before me, do you have any evidence that this woman took the boots into her responsibility? Because your testimony is you left them there. You left your boots. How is someone else responsible? And she was very upset. This was just wrong. Now this other woman has her boots based on no evidence. But, of course, the easy answer is take care of your property, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And it's nobody else's job to care for your property. Mm-hmm. And a lot of places, a lot of parking lots have signs, lock your doors, hide your valuables, take your valuables. People do steal things, right?
Yeah.
Bad, people do things. And so making yourself vulnerable because nobody can, I have a right to my stuff, and I have a right to leave the convertible top down and leave my laptop case sitting in the passenger seat. Well, you do, but you're not taking care of your stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's your responsibility to protect your property. So that's important. Just a little corollary. Do you ever see people walking across a crosswalk with their phone?
Guilty.
Okay.
Guilty.
Here's the thing. If you want to be right, and that's all you care about is being right, then you have a right to walk across that crosswalk. Mm-hmm. You can close your eyes and walk across the crosswalk if you want to. Mm-hmm. But is it prudent? Is it wise? Because some people are not paying attention.
Can end really badly.
And it can end very badly. And you could have avoided it by just looking left and right and walking. And here's what I do. When I see somebody speeding up pretty fast, if I'm walking into the crosswalk, I'll wave howdy to them. Make sure they're seeing, because the movement of the wave will attract their attention. And then I'm watching. I'm not counting on them to hit their brakes. If it doesn't look like they're hit their brakes, I'm getting out of the way.
Yeah.
Because that's just prudence. And I'm talking about being prudent with your property. We talked about the prudent decision of, I'm not going to insure these old secondhand clothes because they're not worth the cost of insurance, and I don't own anything but this couch and this futon that I sleep on, and they're not worth insuring. That's prudence. You've thought it through. You've rendered your practical wisdom on that, and you're going to go to the next thing. So that's smart, but not considering it, walking through life with your head down across the crosswalk, looking at your phone, that's not wise. And something bad's probably going to happen eventually.
Absolutely. This might be jumping into another segment, but I kind of want to bring this in because I think it's relevant. With that being said, what if you live with someone?
Well,
and your property's there?
Yes. And so the question is, we're back to the good fences make good neighbors. You have a couch. Whose couch is it?
So okay, so it's your
Well,
responsibility.
whose is it? That's a question. I don't know whose couch this is. I believe it's my couch. She believes it's her couch, or my roommate believes it's his couch, or whatever it is. Whose couch is it? Whose business is it to take care of? And the answer is nobody knows unless they know, unless they have some kind of when you decide to move in with your three buddies from high school, like we talked about last time, one guy owns everything, or maybe he doesn't. Maybe everybody owns the stuff in their bedroom, and the common area stuff is jointly owned or something, but you got to figure it out. It's always better to figure it out ahead of time.
Absolutely. I had a situation with my roommate where my parents gifted me a lot of furniture, and it was good furniture and a nice TV in my room. And at that time, my grandma passed away and my uncle within the same week. So I had to take 2 weeks and go home and be home. And my roommate, she had people staying in my room, and I had valuables in there. And I was very upset, but I was also 20 years old and very naive. So I didn't know how to confront her or say anything. Nothing was missing, but I could tell people had been in there. But I just asked that because I think that happens to a lot of people in those situations where their property is being mishandled.
Well, it's always a question with a friendly situation of how to make sure the boundaries stay up, how to make sure that fence stays up. But with people that, you're kind of assigned a roommate or something like that, get it up front, make the decision up front. Okay, I just want you to know that under no circumstance are you ever allow anyone in my bedroom. And all of this furniture in the common area is mine, and you're aware of that. You don't have any right to it. Of course, it's a common area, and you can sit on it, but you don't have a right to spill food on the cushions. You don't have a right to do something that might damage the furniture, because if you do damage it, you should pay me for it. It's my property.
Absolutely. I think it goes back into that character that you talked about. Like, you need to be with people that are of good character, or else being in that position is...
And it's hard to know. And you may be in a situation, a lot of people go off to college and they're assigned a roommate, and you're going to get a roommate, and you're going to find out fairly quickly, live with somebody for a while, you'll find out what kind of person they are. They always leave the bathroom a mess. This is no good. The bathroom's got to be squared away. The towels have to be hung up. We don't leave clogs of hair in. I have a lot of trouble with leaving hair in the shower. My wife yells at me, "No, that's a joke." But the bottom line is, you'll find out what they're like.
Absolutely.
But if you have to live in a situation like that, the better that you have a friendly understanding of whose is what, what is whose.
So what you're saying is, with that person that you're going to choose to be roommates with within your property, address, this is mine, kind of assert boundaries, correct?
Yes.
And then also have rental insurance if you have anything of value.
That's correct.
Okay.
And if the roommate damages it and you've got insurance, then your coverage might say, you're covered, and the rental and the insurance company might go after the person who did the damage.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's what happens.
Interesting.
That's what happens in an auto insurance case, right? Let's say we're driving. I'm in car A. I'm in my car. You're in your car, and I run into you. Okay, and I have some insurance, but I'm not sure. Or maybe this is a bad day and I don't have insurance. My insurance expired last week, and I failed to renew it. Didn't mean to, not a bad person, but I didn't have insurance, and I don't have the money to fix your car. So your insurance company pays for your car, and then they sue me. We have these cases in
Yeah,
here every week.
every week. I was gonna ask Judge, what happens, because this is reality. We're in America. There's a lot of immigrants. What happens when this happened to my friend? An immigrant hit her, had no insurance, no citizenship, nothing to give her, and her car was totaled. So she had to. She
suffered the whole loss.
Yeah, she
Yes.
suffered the whole loss. So what happens to that individual who's an illegal and doesn't have
Well,
anything to their name?
The answer is you can sue them, and you'll lose your filing fee, and you may gain a judgment, but it's very difficult to collect. Very difficult to collect, and that person is just like an American citizen who had no money, had no insurance, and when you sue them, you get a judgment for the amount of the damages, and that's a piece of paper that you can treasure, but you can't spend it. So it's the same thing. I don't know what the criminal. Obviously, if you enter the country illegally, you've already broken the U.S. code with respect to illegal entry. So you're an alleged criminal, because the court hadn't found you. But I hope that we can resolve these issues and get the people that shouldn't be here gone, and then maybe come back in a legal way if they have something to offer our country and our society.
Absolutely. So in that instance, it's just you suffer the loss.
You're out of luck.
You're out of luck.
But
Okay.
this is the easy analog to the people who are murdered by illegal immigrants, because there are people murdered by illegal immigrants, and they suffer the whole loss. So it's bad, especially if it's a nice, expensive car, or especially if it's not a great car, but you don't have insurance, you don't have liability, you have I mean, you don't have collision or comprehensive, you just have liability insurance. Okay. So your car insurance only protects the person you hit. That's what liability is. It only covers you if you're liable.
Okay. Yeah.
Many people down the income ladder without a nice car do not have collision or comprehensive. The law doesn't require you to have insurance to fix your car. You have to have insurance to fix the other fellow's car.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So if you're the American who gets hit by an illegal immigrant or anybody without insurance and they don't have a means to pay, and you only have liability insurance, then you just suffer the whole loss. So as a rule, that's the same decision that you're making about insurance that you made when you were a renter. Is this worth insuring? It's an $800 beater car. I got liability insurance, but I'm just accumulating money so I can buy a nicer car. I'm going to buy that Ford F-150. It's going to be used, but it'll be a nicer car than this. And when I get that, I get the 2014 Ford F-150 that's only got 120,000 miles on it. So it's a great truck. It's not been beat to heck. I inspected it carefully. I'm going to put collision, comprehensive, and liability on it so that I can protect my investment. Just like if you own a bunch of nice furniture in your rental house, maybe you have a CD collection, or maybe you like vinyl. My wife and I have an old vinyl record player, stereo record player, cabinet stereo, and we like to play old records on it because it's kind of cool.
Yeah,
and
those are
the
really
sound
cool.
is different. But I got off track. Bottom line is protect your stuff. Make a judgment about the value of your stuff and whether it's worth insuring. And just because it's a beat up car, consider what the replacement value is and what your means to replace it in an emergency.
So would you suggest that people get insurance that also would cover them in an accident?
That is a judgment.
Judgment call.
And so you're required to have liability insurance. I would certainly have, what you might have is a high deductible collision. Okay? So let's say the car's worth $2,000. You might have a $500 deductible. So in a catastrophe, right, your car is totaled. You pay $500 and you're going to get whatever your policy allows. And there may be, replacement cost, but that's higher insurance. So you have to be careful about that. But
Absolutely.
But anyway, that's to me, that's prudence. And we really don't teach young people to be prudent. And they should be bold. They should go off and launch the adventure of their life, okay? But they shouldn't launch it by bungee jumping from the Empire State Building or the Golden Gate Bridge, because that's not bold. That's a little bit, or I take that back. If they're going to bungee jump, they should be an experienced bungee jumper, and they should have inspected the bungee big time, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then for me, I'm kind of a looking for the payoff guy. I want a payoff. I had a wonderful early career in the Air Force, and that the experience was the payoff, but it also paid off in other ways, financial and career wise. So you want a payoff when you're bold, but sometimes it's fun to jump off. Do the bungee jump just for the thrill of the bungee, but that doesn't mean you don't inspect the bungee carefully. So that's my rule: is prudence. It's kind of an old man's virtue, but it will serve young people very well if they're prudent about financial things and about health things and about relationship things.
Absolutely. I love how you created that segment of relationships, because we want to talk about pets.
Okay.
And how having a relationship and having pets together without being married, and just how pets contribute to our property.
Well,
what does that look like, Judge?
In Texas, I love my dogs. We have 3 dogs.
You have more than 3 dogs.
Well, my son has 3 dogs, and my
Okay.
son and his wife and their family live. We have a big house, and we thought about moving. We thought about moving about 9 years ago, and downsizing. And we looked at some places, and we thought about building this and building that. And we went, we're going to spend a whole lot of money to get a smaller house. Why not just stay here? And we love it. And 4 years ago, my son and daughter-in-law moved in, and it's really, hey, help me carry this. Hey, I have 2 grandsons that live with me, and it's like, boys, carry that over there.
That's awesome.
I'm pretty good with this finger. It's like this needs to go there, and
Good.
it happens. So anyway, that's a good thing. So we have 6 dogs in the house, but only 3 of them are
yours.
my
Okay.
responsibility.
I've seen his dogs. They're really cute.
And I love my dogs. We had dogs when I was a little kid. I had to deal with some of the tragedy of having a dog die at home and deal with that. And I love my dogs. There's nothing in the Bible about this, but I think dogs might go to heaven. The good ones.
I do too.
And
100%.
And that's just, I'm going to trust in God, because heaven's a perfect place. I can't imagine a perfect place without your dogs.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
but I love my dogs. In Texas, dogs are property. We don't care how much you love them. You're not going to get any kind of money judgment based on how much you love them or how horrible it hurts for you to lose your dog. The dog is worth what it's worth. And if you can demonstrate the value because it's got this pedigree and it's won these awards, and comparable dogs are selling, he's a stud dog and he's got blah, 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 you might get 4 or 5. I don't know what the value of a really, really nice dog is. All 3 of our dogs, I got one of them from my sister who used to raise bull mastiffs. And so we got George, and George is a good dog, and he's a heck of a good dog. but he drools.
Mm.
And
He's
so
huge.
if you're going to work in your suit, you've got to have already cleaned his face, or you've got to get out of there before he says goodbye, because you're going to have this mess on your pants. Anyway, and then our other two dogs are little poodle mixes, and they're my daughter's, their family's dog. They're from a litter that they had. So we don't spend a lot of money on dogs because you just don't need to.
They're dogs.
They're dogs. But if you have a lawsuit involving, you lived with this girl, you really liked her, you didn't like her enough to marry her, you guys ended up with the dog, she really loves the dog, you're mad at her, so you take the dog to put it out on her, that just doesn't work. Doesn't work. And in a household where you're not married, or if you're married, somebody's usually going to feed them. It's going to be the same person. Somebody's going to usually take them out. Somebody's going to usually take them to the vet. Now, I do all these things at home, but mostly Susan does it.
Yeah.
Okay? If we had to split the dogs up, we'd split them. I'd get George and Susan would get the poodles. But that will never happen because you don't get divorced after 47 and a half years. I think today's the 17th, so we've been married 47 years, 6 months, and it'll be 16 days tonight at about 6:30. So,
Oh my gosh.
anyway,
Wow.
but I'm just talking about
Yeah.
if a
Logistically,
couple
yeah.
splits, well, somebody's going to get the dog, and that's probably going to create some heartache. So back to proper. I'm a retired pilot, as you know, and there's an aphorism in the pilot world: proper prior pre-flight planning prevents poor pilot performance. Okay. And so that's one of those proper prior planning things. Hey, we're never going to live together, but me and Kayla are living together, and we want a dog, or I want a dog, or you want a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Kayla, I'm going to buy this dog. I'm going to pay for all the dog food. I'm going to pay for all the shots. I'm going to buy the collar. I'm going to buy the dog bed. I'm going to do everything because this is my dog. Are you willing to have the dog in the house on that basis? And if you're not, say no and move, or say no, I'll move out if you get a dog. And then move out because you don't want a dog in the house. Because I've got a right to have a dog in the house, right?
It's just, it gets so messy.
It's so messy.
It's so messy. And he has seen a ton of cases.
It's
where,
unbelievable how many people who used to be pretty compatible, I guess, they live together, and now they've got a dog. Typically, the guy has the dog because he's being a jerk in my book, but maybe not. I don't know every detail of how their relationship, but he takes the dog, and she's brokenhearted. And is she really brokenhearted, or does she just want to sue him to get even? I don't know. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah.
And the way to be happy is to be prudent, make a good plan, execute the plan. I'm pretty opposed to the cohabitation thing. I think there's a reason that we're not supposed to do that. I'm going to give you some of the reasons, and it has to do with the sort of a cost-benefit ratio, okay? If you live with someone, and if the woman has a baby, okay, that's a big cost to the woman. It's a massive cost. But it's also a cost to the guy because she can sue you for child support just like she can sue you if you were married. So there's no difference in the cost with respect to children. It's all cost in a marriage versus a cohabitation scenario.
That's what I find so fascinating, that so many people nowadays, statistic-wise, are not getting married, but living together and having children. So what can you repeat that? It's the same.
Well, in the arena of risk of having to support the children, it's the same risk.
Wow.
The woman's going to end up highly likely. The woman's going to have a baby, which is all cost for the first, I don't know, 15, 10 years. Then after 10 years, they can start picking stuff up for you and doing work. Actually, they can do that earlier. But the bottom line, it's still all cost. You can't get that back in child labor. But it's the same cost cohabitating with children or being married with children. It's the same cost. Look at the just the economic cost of living together. Yep, you can each contribute an income if you want to, but you get the same cost in marriage. Okay,
Yeah.
Here's what you're not getting in marriage, or here's what you're getting in marriage that you're not getting in a cohabitation scenario. You're not getting the responsibility. You're not getting the chain together. We're gonna win this fight. We're gonna win it against the world. You don't get that. Did we didn't talk about John Wayne movies in the last episode, did we?
I don't think so.
I don't think we did.
Yeah, we didn't.
I was raised with I didn't really have a father after about the 5th grade. And I learned a lot from watching people. I pick up things by watching men act in the world and going, I don't want to be like that. That's how I want to be. I want to exhibit those behaviors. But sometimes I keep all these aphorisms in my notes in my phone, right? You've seen this. Yeah. And I'm going to butcher this, but there's a movie called, can't recall the name of the movie, McClintock. It's a John Wayne movie from about 65 or 66, and Maureen O'Hara is the female lead. And Wayne and O'Hara made several movies together, and they were all great movies. But in this movie, he's talking to his daughter. He's very wealthy, super successful. And his wife has left him to live back east because she wants to be higher society than he does. And there may have been some other problems. It's not completely clear.
Yeah.
But she comes back for some kind of celebration. I think it's their daughter's 21st birthday or something. And he's alone with his daughter, and he's talking about his future and her future. And he said, well, I'm going to leave most of the ranch for a national park so people can see how wonderful it is. And she's pretty crestfallen because she thought she was an heiress, And she says, but what about me? And he said, well, I'm going to leave you, 500 acres up on the so-and-so river or something like that. And in cattle country, 500 acres for a big ranch, that ain't a big ranch. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And she's pretty crestfallen, and she's engaged to be married, I think, at the time. And he says, nothing will ever be like being alone with your spouse, knowing that you've got to make it. He didn't say the word spouse. Knowing that you've got to make it because you're going to have all that growing together. Okay? Husbands and wives grow together over time, and they do that based on the responsibilities of having children, the responsibility of making sure that rent or mortgage is paid, the responsibility that the husband has to do well in his job so he can earn enough money. This is just a social science statistic. Husbands make more money than single men. Control every other variable. You want to make more money? Get married. Now, you're going to spend more money, but you're going to have to, you've got responsibility. You've got to live up to that. You've got to bring home the bacon. And that's just the way men are built. I don't have any responsibilities. I guess I don't need to do anything. I think I'll go over here. I think I'll go over there. And that's the way people are. So The benefits of marriage greatly, overwhelmingly outweigh the benefits of, cohabitation is basically, hey, let's just kind of have sex without being married and having any. We'll do it with
Commitment.
no commitment, no responsibilities.
Yeah.
We don't need a piece of paper, right? And at some point, you didn't get what you were supposed to get out of that relationship because you didn't get the responsibility, you didn't learn the commitment, you didn't learn how to say, we talked about continuity last time. You didn't learn how to say, honey, I stopped at the bar, I played an extra round of golf, or whatever it was you did, and you didn't coordinate with her. Because if I'm going to be long somewhere, I text Susan. Now, we have cell phones now, so it should be super easy just to be straight with your spouse.
Absolutely. Yep.
I had a really rough day. I'm going to stop with Jim and have a beer. If you can't communicate like that with your spouse, you need to work on that.
Wow.
But
Absolutely.
But anyway, I think marriage is just about the best thing.
I love that. Absolutely love that.
All right. What other property questions do we want to talk about?
I think we're going to move into our Q&A.
Okay.
But can you kind of just like regurgitate everything you said about property on how we could protect ourselves?
Let's make it as simple as we can.
Okay, yes.
Start with the good fences make good neighbors.
Good fences.
Figure out what's yours. Figure out what's the other fellas. Respect the other fella's stuff. Insist that your stuff be respected. Try and do that up front. Okay, in any kind of relationship. If you buy a house, walk next door during the daylight at 6 p.m., knock on the door and say, hi, I'm your new neighbor, right?
Yeah.
We're neighbors. And that way we can always work together on making the fence correct. We get lawsuits from people whose fences are wrong or something, and they're 6 inches on my land and blah, blah, blah. I always build my fence 6 inches on my side, right? So there's no doubt.
Absolutely.
But know what's yours, know what's the other fellow's, respect it, insist that yours is respected. Get an understanding early in the relationship, if you're going to live with people, about what's whose. I would not own a pet in common. If you're not ready to get married, you're certainly not ready to have a pet.
Yeah.
Unless you're living by yourself and you've got the financial wherewithal to do that, in which case that's your business. Protect your property with insurance as is prudent. Make sure you got liability insurance on your car.
Please. It's the law.
It's the law.
Follow the law, please.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, we're back for our Q&A. How do you feel, Judge?
I'm ready for the Q&A.
Awesome.
I think some of these I haven't heard, and some of them I have heard. So we'll just wing it.
Awesome. So a lot of these are pertaining to rental agreements and just how that works with roommates and such. So, all right, question 1. What legal conditions permit a tenant to break a lease?
Okay, this one is fairly clear in the Texas Property Code.
Okay.
And before I give you these things, I want to say that it's not automatic. It's not what you think it is. These conditions have to be maybe not adjudicated, but they have to be determined by evidence that's outside of you mostly.
Okay.
And I'll explain that more in detail. Well, the first one is the easiest one, and that is military deployment. If you're deployed, and I think there's a certain amount of time, or you have a permanent change of station to another place, then you can break your lease. And you have to notice the landlord. Can't remember the number of days of notice. I think it's a 30-day notice in all these cases. So if you just paid your April rent and it's April the 1st and you get orders, you got to give and you will rarely get orders for a deployment unless it's wartime. Both of my deployments I got with like 10 days notice, but
oh, wow.
I should say both of my deployments in this century, because I was deployed a bunch in the 80s. But the bottom line is you've got to give notice.
Okay.
So I've just got orders. Here's my notice. It'll be 6 weeks, or it'll be what? But you're liable for 30 days. Okay, and then you should move your stuff out, return the key, and call it good, and you're good. I would keep evidence of the notice and the key turn in and all the dates. So if the landlord ever tried to sue you, there'd be a problem.
Absolutely.
The next thing is if the law says family violence, but I think it more rightly would be called domestic violence. If there was violence against you in the house by someone who lived there. So it could be a cohabitating partner or a stepfather or something like that. Then you can break your lease. But you have to have the police report. You have to, there's some conditions.
The elements of evidence.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And then the next one is if you're a victim of sexual assault or stalking. Sexual assault or stalking are both in the same category, and that you have to have the police report and those kinds of things. You have to provide all that to your landlord and tell them you're vacating. So that's, those are the three major categories. Okay. There are two more categories. One of them's real simple. If you die, you can break your lease.
I really hope so.
The landlord has to get notice because the estate will owe the money if it just keeps rolling. So someone will know that you died, and someone should know that you had an apartment lease, and they should go tell the apartment manager that you've died and give them a copy of the death certificate. Okay. The last one is the most complicated and most difficult one, and it has to do with a problem affecting the health and safety of the occupant. And that is not I feel like my health and safety is affected. That's actually a court saying it does, or the landlord agreeing with you that it does. Okay, so typical things that are often said but are rarely proved are mold in the apartment, non-functioning utilities, a toilet that's leaking. That's going to affect the health and safety. That shouldn't have toilet water on the floor. A heater air conditioner that doesn't work properly. It's going to get real hot or real cold. Those are the kinds of things that might affect it. The key that's in Texas Property Code 92056, if I'm not mistaken. And by the way, we should have a note that all of this legal stuff is Texas. I have no idea what the property code says in California, and I hope I never know. But they are different, and there are different. A lot of jurisdictions provide a lot more rights to tenants and duties to landlords. It's very difficult to evict people in California. I think it's difficult in New York as well. But once again, not my problem. I'm a Texas attorney and Texas judge. So in Texas, what you do if you bring something to the landlord's attention and they won't let you out of the lease because it's a problem, then you must bring a lawsuit called a suit for the repair and remedy of a dwelling. And that lawsuit starts with a written notice to the landlord of the problem. And some courts allow writings to be email, and some allow them to be text, but many courts require them to be a writing on a paper that you deliver and there's a place in every lease, most leases, in the good leases, where notices pursuant to this lease shall be given at this address or something like that. So you need to look at that, and you need to look at the Texas Property Code as to exactly what the steps are, because one of the elements of the of the case is the landlord took no steps or no reasonable steps to remedy this problem, right?
Yeah.
And so if the landlord takes reasonable step to remedy it, they've had a maintenance guy out there 5 times. He's out there quickly after you call or put in the complaint ticket on the website, whatever it is. If they have a guy coming out and working the problem, well, then that's not a repair and remedy. You can't win in a repair and remedy lawsuit. Now, the bottom line, if there's something seriously wrong with the dwelling, let's say, there's a fire, or let's say there's a car crash into a bottom floor apartment or something, the landlord should work with you and go, okay, well, we'll move you to another unit, or you can be excused from the lease or something. They should work with you. The first step is always work with them, but the first step of working with them is notice, right? Mm-hmm. People can't fix things that they're not properly noticed about.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the answer to that question.
Great. Thank you so much. Question 2. How long can someone live in your apartment until it becomes illegal?
Well, it depends on the lease. Are you talking about a guest?
Yeah, like how long can a guest stay in your apartment?
Many leases will say over 3 nights or over a week, a guest, are not allowed. And many of them will say guests must sign in at the office. You must go and say, I'm going to have Ryan, or I'm going to have Sean, or I'm going to have Dave staying over at my apartment. He's down looking for a job down here, and I expect him to be here for 4 days or 5 days, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And then the landlord may say, well, you can't have anybody in your apartment more than 3 days or more than 2 weeks or whatever it is. And now you know, and if you have them there longer, what have you done? Prohibited conduct, and you can get evicted. So.
Oh, wow. So people need to be careful with that.
Yes.
Okay, question 3. Under what circumstances can a landlord raise the rent, and what is the legal framework of that?
Okay. Well, there are all kinds of tenants. There's a tenant at will, a tenant for a fixed term, a tenant by sufferance, blah, 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 a lot of legal mumbo jumbo. But the bottom line is, if you have a lease that's current, okay, this lease started in November of 2024 and it expires the end of October in 2025. My lease is this place for this amount of money. They can't change the amount of money until the lease ends.
Okay.
Now, oftentimes apartments will offer you a new lease before the end of your rental term. And the new lease will start at the end of your term, and there will be a rental increase. Things go up. And so you can either sign that lease and stay or not sign it. If you don't sign the lease at the end of your fixed term, the 31 October the 31st in this example, then now you're a month-to-month tenant. And you have to pay the rent, okay, every month. But as soon as you pay the rent, you're good for 30 days. Now, you have to pay it on time. They can still evict you for paying late. But they might say, hey, the rent just went up by $200. Now you have a choice. You can pay the $200 or not. If you don't pay the $200, you're going to get evicted, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're not within your lease term, they can raise the rent kind of willy-nilly. Now, as soon as you pay what they ask, well, they can't raise it again until the end of the month. But theoretically, they could just every month go, hey, it's $200 more, or $400 or $1,000. I mean, there's no limit on that.
Oh, wow.
So the answer is negotiate a good lease, stay on the good side of your landlord, and sign the new lease when it's offered. Or if it's offered, make them a counter offer. Look, I can't go $1,870, but I can go $1,800, because they wanted to raise the rent by $150, and you can't quite get there. So, but if they won't do it, you're either going to plan on moving out or or start paying the higher rent on the lease. Get a lease. Because if you don't get a lease, what can they do the next month? They can raise another $200. They can raise you another.
Wow.
If you're not on a lease, then they can make the rent whatever they want to. Now they can't retroact it, right? But you got to worry about that.
Absolutely. This is our last question. Could I have alcohol in the home with an underage roommate?
Okay. Is the underage roommate a roommate? Is this like a 21-year-old and a 20-year-old?
So I'm 21 and she's 19 and we're living together, college mates.
Okay.
And I have alcohol in the fridge.
You're free. You're an American. You're 21. You have a right to. It's your property. The apartment is your property, and the alcohol is your property, and there's no problem with that. The problem, and in fact. I'm not going to say no 20-year-old ever took a drink of their roommate's wine or whiskey or whatever it was. But the worrisome thing would be if a claim could be made that you provided them with alcohol and then something bad happened, okay? Because now you have put yourself into the responsibility situation, right? I don't know if you know, there's a thing called, what's it called? Not tavern, but an innkeepers are not supposed to serve drunken people, and they're not supposed to serve minors. And if an innkeeper serves a drunk, and the drunk goes out and kills somebody, the innkeeper can be liable.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, similarly, if you serve an underage person in your home, okay, you can be liable, not for selling alcohol to a minor, because that's not what you did. But if they do something that hurts someone or themselves, you might have some liability there. So, that's one of those prudent things.
Be careful.
And be careful.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Well,
Awesome.
I sure enjoyed it, Kayla. What are we going to talk about next time? Have we gone over that?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think we're going to talk about, nope, I can't remember what we're going to talk about. So you tell me.
We are going to talk about, you know what? We'll get back to that.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Maybe we'll tease that with a blurb on the website after this episode.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to be uncomfortable. I've been looking forward to this one so much that I kind of put the next one out of my mind. But we'll get it figured out and we'll get it done.
We'll get it figured out. All right. Awesome.
Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you. Okay, guys. So if you haven't watched episode 1 of Law and Life, please go watch that. This episode will make a lot more sense. But we enjoyed having y'all and discussing property. Do you have any last thoughts?
The injunction to be wise, and that's hard. Being wise is hard. Sometimes you have to get experience to be wise, but often your experience is painful. So the best way to learn is to watch other people or to read a book or maybe to listen to this podcast.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.